The Cleveland Browns asked Myles Garrett for 9 years. 9 years of patience, 9 years of loyalty, 9 years of believing things would eventually get better. And for 9 years, he gave them exactly what they wanted. Then today, he left. Not because he stopped believing in football, because eventually he stopped believing football's promise applied to him. Because this isn't really a story about a trade, it's a story about a question football never wants its players asking. What happens when you do everything right and still don't get what you were promised? Football sells a simple idea: work hard, stay committed, trust the process, do things the right way, and eventually you'll get what you've earned. It's the foundation of every locker room speech, every championship documentary, every motivational poster hanging inside an NFL facility. The promise is simple: sacrifice now, reward later. And when the Cleveland Browns selected Myles Garrett first overall in 2017, nobody embodied that promise better than he did. Because Cleveland wasn't drafting a player, they were drafting hope. At the time, the Browns were one of the most dysfunctional organizations in professional sports. Quarterbacks failed, coaches failed, rebuilds failed. Year after year, the future never arrived. Then came Myles Garrett, and suddenly everything felt possible again. Not because he was good, because he was different. The kind of player organizations spend decades trying to find. The kind of player who changes expectations the moment he arrives. The kind of player who makes people believe. And that's exactly what Cleveland did. They believed. So did he. Almost immediately, Garrett became everything football asks a franchise player to become: elite, reliable, dominant. The sacks came, the Pro Bowls came, the All-Pro selections came, the respect came. Everything football normally rewards. Everything except winning. And at first that wasn't a problem, because losing feels different when you believe it's temporary. Every season felt like a stepping stone. Every disappointment felt fixable. Every setback felt like part of a bigger plan. Then the years started stacking up. Brock Osweiler, Deshaun Kaiser, Tyrod Taylor, Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett, Deshaun Watson, quarterback after quarterback, hope after hope, plan after plan. The names changed, the vision changed. The one constant was Myles Garrett. Every year he got better. Every year he carried more responsibility. Every year Cleveland asked him for more patience, and every year he gave it to them, because that's what loyal players do. They stay, even when leaving would have been easier. Most stars don't survive this chapter. Eventually frustration wins. Eventually the trade rumors start. Eventually the relationship breaks. But Garrett stayed. The NFL is filled with players chasing better situations. Garrett kept betting on Cleveland, and for a moment, it looked like that bet was finally going to pay off. The Browns started winning. The playoff drought ended. The future Garrett had spent years waiting for suddenly felt real. This was the payoff. This was why he stayed. This was why he endured the losing. This was why he kept believing. Then came Kansas City. The Browns lost. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was this: for the first time, losing felt temporary. The future still looked bright. Cleveland wasn't chasing relevance anymore. They were chasing championships. Or at least that's what everyone thought. Then came the biggest decision of the Browns era: Deshaun Watson. The fully guaranteed contract, the draft picks, the expectations. This wasn't a rebuild anymore. This was a declaration. The Browns were done waiting. Or at least they wanted everyone to believe they were. Because the Watson trade wasn't just a roster move. It was a promise. A promise that all the losing had finally led somewhere. A promise that the years Garrett spent carrying the franchise were about to pay off. A promise that his prime wouldn't be spent dragging uncertainty across the finish line. For the first time in years, Cleveland wasn't asking Garrett for more patience. They were telling him the wait was over. The future had arrived. Except it hadn't. The answer never became the answer. The breakthrough never became a breakthrough. And suddenly the timeline started feeling different. Not because Garrett was declining, because he wasn't. Because for the first time, the possibility became impossible to ignore. What is the future he'd been waiting for had already passed him by? Then Garrett reached the mountaintop. Defensive Player of the Year, the highest honor a defender can receive. The entire sport acknowledged what Cleveland already knew. Myles Garrett had become the best defensive player in football. Think about that. The Browns had the best defensive player on earth, a generational talent, a future Hall of Famer, a player every contender would desperately want. It should have felt like the beginning. Instead, it felt strangely like a warning, because Garrett was receiving everything except the thing he'd spent 9 years chasing. Not recognition, not respect, not awards, winning. And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because eventually another question appears. Not whether Cleveland wasted Myles Garrett, whether Myles Garrett wasted Myles Garrett, because every season spent waiting was a season he couldn't get back. Every year spent believing was another year of his prime, another year of greatness, another year of a championship window quietly shrinking. And suddenly, loyalty stops looking purely heroic. It starts looking expensive. The hardest part wasn't losing. The hardest part was realizing he had already done his part. For years, every conversation sounded the same. If Myles Garrett keeps playing like this, eventually they'll figure it out. Eventually, the quarterback situation stabilizes. Eventually, the roster comes together. Eventually, the future arrives. Eventually. Then one day, another possibility appears. What if they don't? What if you've already given everything you were supposed to give? What if loyalty can't fix what loyalty didn't break? And that's when the story changes. Because suddenly, the question isn't whether Garrett is willing to wait, it's whether waiting still makes sense. For years, people asked whether Myles Garrett was loyal enough to Cleveland. Eventually, a different question became more important. Was Cleveland loyal enough to Myles Garrett? Then came the trade request, and for the first time, the most loyal player in Cleveland didn't sound frustrated. He sounded exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of exhaustion that only comes from carrying hope longer than anyone expected. And then today happened. After years of waiting, years of believing, years of trusting the process, the Cleveland Browns traded Myles Garrett to the Los Angeles Rams. A contender, a championship window, a team built around today instead of tomorrow. For nearly a decade, Garrett had been betting on what Cleveland might become. Now, he's betting on what already exists. Maybe he'll win a championship in Los Angeles. Maybe he won't. Maybe Cleveland eventually becomes everything it always promised to be. Maybe it won't. But that's no longer Garrett's burden to carry, because this was never really a story about a trade. It was a story about belief, about how long someone can keep believing, about how many promises someone can carry before they become too heavy to hold. For 9 years, Myles Garrett did everything football asked him to do. Work, lead, sacrifice, stay loyal, trust the process. And football kept telling him the reward was coming. Just wait a little longer, one more season, one more year, one more chance. For nearly a decade, he believed it. Then today, he made a different choice. For 9 years, Myles Garrett waited for the future. Today, he stopped waiting. And maybe that's what makes this story so uncomfortable. Because football tells players that loyalty will eventually be rewarded. Myles Garrett believed that for nearly a decade. Then one day, one of football's most loyal superstars looked at the promise he'd spent years trusting and decided he'd waited long enough.